What's your favorite kind of pie?
Cinnamon pie.
What kind of pie do you like?
Pecan pie.
So what's your favorite kind of pie?
My favorite kind of pie is chocolate.
Chocolate pie?
Yep.
What do you like on it?
I like whipped cream on it.
What kind of crust? Do you like a regular crust or do you like a graham cracker crust?
I like regular crust.
Regular crust, that sounds delicious. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black. I'm Dr. Black. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and lifestyle medicine doctor, and I started this podcast because I believe in empowering people to take control of their health, whether it's through better nutrition, active living, or even small changes that lead to big results. My hope is that every episode gives you practical tools that you can use right away to make healthy living easier and more sustainable. But sometimes I do a fun little episode about, shall we say, a less healthy food? Because let's face it, no one wants to only eat kale, including me. So today I have a special bonus episode. This is an irrationally fun episode all about pie, because today is Pie Day. That's my favorite holiday. And in case you've never heard of it, Pie Day is a holiday that combines nerdy math with delicious baked goods. So, of course, it is my favorite holiday. In this well-rounded episode, you're going to learn fun facts about pie and pie. You know, mathematical kind and the edible kind. Anyways, I'll calculate the most popular pie fillings, fill you in on some bizarre pies from around the world, and answer a hotly debated question: is pizza really a pie? So don't flake out. Be sure to listen to the entire episode. Let's dig in. All right, let's get the math part out of the way first because, well, math, am I right? What even is pi? If you're not a mathematician, and to be fully transparent here, I am not a mathematician, actually. Pi, spelled P-I, is defined as the circumference of a circle divided by its diameter. So think about the circumference. That's how far you would have to walk if you went all the way around the perimeter of the circle. And the diameter is how far you would have to walk if you started at one point and then cut straight through the center to the other side of the circle. Regardless of the size of the circle, when you do that calculation, you always get the same number, and that's pi. It starts out as 3.14, which is why today is Pi Day, right? It's March 14th, hence 3.14. But here's the thing. It actually keeps going beyond that a lot. In fact, forever. It never stops. Keeps going forever. And the numbers never repeat. So that's what makes pi such an unusual number. It literally goes on forever, unlike your patience for listening to me talk about math. Let's start with some fun facts, shall we? Mathematicians have actually calculated pi out to over 100 trillion digits. But let's be real, most of us only get to about 3.14, maybe 3.14159, which is honestly about as far as I can go from memory. Now, there are competitions where people will compete to see how far out they can recite pi from memory. So that's like the ultimate in nerd competitions. Way back about 4,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians and Babylonians had rough estimates of pi, but it wasn't very accurate. Archimedes of Syracuse in about 250 BCE is considered the first person to calculate pi with any real accuracy. And of course, he didn't have a calculator, so props to Archimedes. Pi Day was officially recognized as a day back in 1988 thanks to a physicist named Larry Shaw, who, of course, celebrated by eating pie. Naturally, I mean, how else would you celebrate? If you have applied to go to college at MIT, you will get your acceptance letter on, you guessed it, Pi Day. Some other weird pie stuff. Some people write poems. That's instead of poems, poems with an I, where the number of letters in each word matches the digits of pi, right? So the most common example is how I wish I could calculate pi, which is 3.141592. I briefly considered making up my own pi-em for this episode, but creative writing is not my strong point, so no, did not do that. Pi is considered an irrational number, and in math, irrational does not mean your ex's behavior. It has a very specific definition. An irrational number is a number that cannot be written as a simple fraction. So if you think of 0.5, that's the same as a half, 1 over 2, or 0.75 equals 3 over 4, 3/4, right? You cannot express pi as a fraction, and that's because it keeps on going forever. So here's how you can remember it. If a number keeps running away and never settles down into a neat fraction, it's irrational. Kind of like a hyperactive toddler who just ate too much pie. You could say that pi is like my love for, pi. It's irrational and never-ending. And since pi is used to calculate the area of a circle, the mathematical formula is pi times r squared, where r is the radius. You can use pi to calculate how much pi, P-I-E, you have. And so if you think about it, math is really the only thing standing between you and eating an entire pie. Sorry, not sorry. All right, let's move on to the tastier part of this episode and talk about P-I-E pie. Starting with the OG pies, the Egyptians made the first known pies, and it was more like a thick bread stuffed with meats, dates, and nuts. Then the Romans took it up a notch, making some sweet and sometimes savory pies. In medieval Europe, you could get something called a coffin, spelled C-O-F-F-Y-N, and yes, very much like, coffins. They were made with a very thick crust that was actually inedible, and that was used to hold the stuffing inside. Fast forwarding to the 1600s in England, Oliver Cromwell actually banned decadent foods, including mincemeat pies. And of course, he also killed a lot of people and was just generally not a nice guy, so it makes sense that he would also have deprived people of pie. He was just a bad guy. Main villain vibes, no cap. Speaking of banning pie, did you know that in 1902, in Kansas, cherry pie was considered so irresistibly decadent that it was banned by the legislature for being too sensual? I don't know about you, but I want that recipe. In the record books, we have the biggest pumpkin pie ever made that weighed in at over 3,600 pounds. The most expensive pie ever sold cost over $10,000 and included rare beef and truffles in the ingredients. And if you're a big fan of classic movies, going back to the black and white times, you will undoubtedly have seen the slapstick gags of throwing a pie in somebody's face. That started back in 1909 with a movie called Mr. Flip, and ever since then, pie fights have been a comedy staple. Now, what do you think the most popular pie fillings are? Let's count down the top 5, starting with
5.
Blueberry, a juicy, vibrant, beautiful blueberry pie. They are a favorite in New England and other places where wild blueberries grow in abundance.
4.
This is a surprise. Cherry pie. So, if cherry pie, the pie so irresistibly good, so downright sensual that it had Kansas legislators clutching their pearls, only landed at number 4, just imagine what's coming next. If a pie with that much forbidden allure didn't even crack the top 3, you know we're about to get into some dangerously delicious territory.
3.
Pecan pie. It's sweet, nutty, it's packed with gooey goodness. It's a favorite in the American South and often contains bourbon. I mean, maybe that's why it's coming in at number 3.
2.
Good old pumpkin pie. It just wouldn't be Thanksgiving without pumpkin pie. This spice delight dates back to early American settlers who originally baked it inside a hollowed-out pumpkin instead of a crust.
1.
You probably know what I'm going to say. The number one most popular pie is apple pie, the undisputed classic, often spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg and topped with either a lattice or my favorite, brown sugar crumble. Apple pie even has its own saying, right? You've probably heard it, as American as apple pie. Except apparently it isn't. It turns out that apple pie was originally developed in England in the 1300s. What are some weird pies from around the world? Let's start with stargazy pie. This is from England, and it's a pie where whole fish are baked in. And I mean, like the entire fish. In fact, the head pokes out of the crust, eyes and all. Another one from the UK, we've got Flies Cemetery from Scotland. Now, the flies in this pie are not actually insects, it's just raisin pie. Back in the Great Depression in the United States, we had something called vinegar pie. This was made because nobody could get lemons during the Depression, but what they did have was vinegar, so they used it as the acid to break down the fruit sugar. Now, speaking of weird, there's something called mock apple pie. I think it's just mocking pie in general. Nabisco, at one point, came out with a recipe using Ritz crackers instead of the apples. Yeah, I don't get it either. This is creative marketing at its finest, I think. Fried cricket pie, anyone? If you're looking for a sustainable, high-protein pie, try traveling to Thailand or Mexico. Now, I've heard of grasshopper pie, which is, not actually made with insects, but crickets? Nah, I think I'll pass, thanks. Moving over to Japan, some bakeries will top a custard or fruit pie with sweetened green peas. I'd like some pie peas. Back here in the United States, another unusual combination. Some people will top apple pie with cheddar cheese. Yes, you heard me right, cheese on pie. Now, people swear by it. I have not tried it myself, but I did go to a fondue restaurant once where they gave you fresh apples to dip in the melted cheese. This was back when I used to eat cheese. And it was actually surprisingly good. So that one might be a winner. But one that I would not be interested in the Midwest and some southern states, people are known to put mayonnaise on their pie. They just want more heart disease. Pie with a side of coronary artery disease, maybe? Not sure. No, thank you. And of course, pies don't have to be sweet. There are plenty of examples of savory pies, things like empanadas, pasties, pierogies, etc. I went to kindergarten in a small town in Louisiana called Natchitoches, and my dad would pick me up from school, and afterwards we would go to Lazion's, and I would get 2 meat pies and a small Coke. Now, speaking of savory pies, it's time to see if we can clear up the great debate. Is pizza actually a pie? It seems that humans can and will argue about just about anything, and food is no exception. So let's break down the arguments for and against calling pizza a pie. Starting with the defense. First off, the word pizza actually means pie in some Italian dialects. And in New York and some other parts of the U.S., pizza pie is a common phrase, which, when you think about it, may be a little redundant. Now, traditional pies have a base crust that holds a filling, which pizza does as well. And deep dish pizza in particular looks and functions a lot like a savory pie. And pizza is similar to other dishes that we classify as pies. If we can call quiche, pot pie, and shepherd's pie pies, even though they don't have a traditional top crust, why not pizza? All right, now that the defense has rested its case, what does the prosecution have to say? To begin with, pizza does not have a top crust or is not encased. Traditional pies fully enclosed their filling with dough. Remember those coffins back from ancient England? Pizza is usually open-faced. Even deep dish pizza has exposed cheese and sauce, unlike a fully enclosed pie. But on the other hand, of course, the same thing could be said of quiche, and it is considered a pie, so I don't know how much that argument holds water. Another structural difference, Most pies are made in a deep dish or a round pan with sloped edges, while most pizzas are baked on a flat stone or a flat pizza pan. And some people take issue with the fact that pizza is made with dough instead of a crust, right? Pizza dough is soft and chewy. It's like bread, whereas pies have a flaky, buttery crust. And some people argue that bread-based dishes like, focaccia should not be lumped in with classic pies. Pizza just kind of, at its core, feels more like a flatbread than a traditional pie. I mean, we don't call non-pita and focaccia pies, so why would pizza get the designation? What's the verdict here? Technically, pizza does have some pie-like qualities, especially the deep dish or Sicilian-style pizzas. But on the other hand, most purists wouldn't call pizza a pie in the same way that they call apple or pecan pie a pie. So basically, it just kind of depends on who you ask. If we're being traditional, pizza isn't technically a pie. But honestly, if someone offers you a slice, are you really going to argue? Pizza can reconnect us back to some math, though. Recall from the start of the episode that pi can be used to calculate the area of a circle. The formula is pi r squared, where r is the radius. Pizzas are circular, so the formula applies. A while back, there was a thing going around social media about what would give you the most pizza for your money, one large or two smalls. And of course, it's going to depend on the sizes offered by the pizza restaurant and how much they charge, but it goes something like this. Which one gives you more pizza? A single 18-inch pizza or two 12-inch pizzas? Now, if you don't know about pie, you might think that two 12-inch pizzas is 24 inches, which is more than 18. So obviously, you're getting more pizza, right? An 18-inch pizza, 18 inches is the diameter. That's all the way across. Half of the diameter is the radius. So half of an 18-inch pizza would be 9 inches. Pi times 9 squared is about 254 square inches of pizza. On the other hand, the 12-inch pizzas. The radius of a 12-inch pizza is 6, and pi times 6 squared is 113. And if you have two of those, you have 226 square inches. So a single 18-inch pizza beats out two 12-inch pizzas. So next time you order pizza, you might want to take a couple of minutes to do some math to see how you can get more pizza for less dough. All right, unlike mathematical pi, this episode is coming to an end. One more piece of trivia. We like Pi Day so much in our family that when my daughter adopted a cat from the shelter, it just coincidentally fell on Pi Day. So, of course, we had to name the cat Pi. Actually, his full name is Pythagoras, but we spelled it with P-I instead of P-Y, and we call him Pi. And then a couple of years later, she adopted a second cat and named it Tau. Tau is the mathematical symbol for 2 times pi. So she has 2 cats, Pi and Tau. So yes, we're nerds. So whether you're celebrating with numbers or with dessert, although I'm not sure why you have to choose only one, Pi Day is a great excuse to geek out and indulge. Whether you're a pi r squared fan or only care that pies are round, I hope you enjoyed this episode because when it comes to pie, the only thing that should be divided is the slices. So go grab your fork, grab a calculator if you want to, and enjoy the irrational goodness of pie. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to eat your pie.